And welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to recap of round number 8 of the European Chess Championship. Yesterday was the rest day, so there was no game and no recap, but today I'm back with full force, and some of you have seen my last game didn't go so well from round number 7, where I lost with the black pieces. But today I'm quite happy with how the game went, so I would suggest we jump right into it. Before we start, I also wanted to give a huge thank you to all of my community, basically, for showing so much support after my last game, which I lost. That was like fantastic of all of you, and I'm really grateful for all of your nice words and encouragement. So yeah, just thank you from all of my heart. Thank you so much for all of the support. It really meant a lot to me. So recap of today. My opponent is a women international master. She's originally from Russia, but now represents Serbia, rating around 2300, and she's also quite young, I think born in 2004. And she plays always e4, and I today chose the French defense. And we had this line with knight c3, knight f6, and now she went for bishop g5, which I didn't prepare that much since she mostly goes for e5. But I did prepare like a small idea here. So after bishop g5, the main move, also what I played, is d takes e4. Black has quite a couple of options. The McCutcheon bishop e4, which is quite sharp. There's also this move h6, which has gotten quite a lot of popularity recently. This pawn sacrifice, which is also quite interesting. But it's more for equality and not really that that active for black. Also, white has this very nice choice with a3 here, just stopping bishop b4 when it's not that easy for black to generate that many chances. There's also the old line bishop e7, which is, I think, actually not so bad, like from a practical point of view, because now white basically has to go for e5, and after knight d7, now again you reach this typical French structure, which even though it's objectively a bit better for white, since the position is so closed, it's definitely playable, and it's also one interesting choice here. White has both options, bishop e7 and h4 are the big lines here. But in this game, I went for d takes e4, and after knight takes e4, I surprised my opponent with this move bishop d7, which is still quite rare. I think that Arjun Erigaisi has played it once, but other than that, there are not many games here. And the idea in general is that you want to get kind of a better version than this line. Like there's this line d4, knight e4, and bishop d7, followed by bishop c6, which is a bit dubious, honestly. Like white just has a very nice position here overall. But with this move bishop d7 here, the bishop is on g5, and it's a little bit different, but often you will get a better version in general than in this other bishop d7 line. So she went knight f3, which is probably the most logical move. I also briefly checked the move queen f3, which is also a possibility, but black is doing okay, I think, after bishop e7. So she went knight f3. She could also take right away. In general, to understand this line with bishop d7, it might be useful to point out firstly this move bishop e7, which is apart from knight bd7 the main move. And after bishop e7, now white usually goes bishop takes f6, and this line with g takes f6 now is quite theoretical, I would say. Black is usually doing quite okay here, but there's some theory here. There's also knight f6 here, when now black has to take with the bishop. Why that is important, we're gonna get to that later, because g takes f6 here is not that good. I think because of bishop f4, bishop e3, in general the bishop should go here, when the bishop is not doing much on e7. I'm saying this now because we're gonna get something quite similar in a second. So after bishop d7, she went knight f3, and now after bishop c6, she would have the option to capture here on f6. And after g takes f6 to move the bishop to e3 or h4, for example. But now I don't have this move bishop e7, which is not doing that much. So I think I had this move queen d6 here still in my notes, which is in general quite a nice idea. You want to develop the knight to d7 and then have long castle. If you play knight d7 first here, then you have a hard time getting queenside castle. You would have to go queen e7, where the queen is not doing that much. So this idea is quite nice. I think my preparation kind of ended here. There's also bishop h4, when now I think I had this idea with bishop e7, and there was quite a cool idea with knight d7, knight f8, knight g6. And then the bishop has to go to g3, and then there's some f5, f4 ideas. So I didn't have that much knowledge here, just a couple of ideas. After bishop c6, she went knight e2, which I didn't know at all. It's also probably not that much much of a critical move. Bishop d3 is probably kind of the safest option for white, I would say. Now the idea is, I think bishop e7, and my preparation was something like bishop f6. Now bishop f6, perhaps gf6 might also be possible here, but I think I prepared something like this, queen e2. Now I'm just wondering if I could take this pawn. I think it was c3, what was my preparation. c3, knight d7, queen e2, queen e7. And if long castle, black castle will castle long, and if short castle, I assume that black will castle short. So black will castle in the direction which white will also castle in. Position is maybe slightly worse for black, but it's certainly playable here. I guess, I mean, black's position seems kind of easy to play. White's position too, but I will play something like king b8, b6, bishop b7 perhaps, and it's just a game. But she went knight e2, and here I went h6. In general, I could already play a couple of moves here. I was also considering bishop e7, but in general, I thought it's not that much of a difference unless she takes, which she did. And now I can take with the queen, which I thought is even better than taking with the bishop. For example, if I go bishop e7, bishop d3, and then take with the bishop, it's certainly also okay for black, but I thought the queen would be a bit more active on f6. So she took, by the way, if bishop h4, I thought that already g5 could work, and then g4 when I'm picking up the pawn on d4 in the next move. So she took and went knight e5, bishop d6, and I have comfortably equalized here. There's no question about it. She went knight dc4. I was also thinking about knight c6 here, but after take c3 short castle, it's only black that can be better. I'm just pushing e5 in the next move, and she's still somewhat underdeveloped. So she went knight c4, just stabilizing the knight on e5. I went short castle, quite logical, queen d2. And here I played bishop d5, which there's nothing wrong with it, but perhaps the idea with knight d7 would have been a bit better. I knew this idea to just allow white to take here and then to follow it up by c5, but somehow in this position I didn't evaluate it correctly, perhaps. So this knight d7 would be quite good. Also the idea bishop e5, knight e5, and now knight d7 would, with the same idea of knight c6, just bc, followed by c5 would be quite comfortable for black. But I went for bishop d5, long castle, and now rook d8. So my idea was just to kind of put this rook on this file and then to prepare c5 with bishop f8. And she went f4, which I thought is quite logical, further stabilizing the knight on e5, but this was actually already an inaccuracy because she's simply not fast enough with this play here with g4, as it happened in the game. Instead, knight d6 was a move suggested by the computer, and after c d6, knight g4, which in the game I thought even that I could go queen e7 here, but the computer shouts that knight h6 works, and I think what I missed here is that white will bring the rook with a disastrous outcome for black. But after knight g4, I could still go queen h4, and now after knight e3, bishop e4, position is also certainly playable for black. The king on c1 could also be a bit weak, like I have some ideas with knight c6 and knight b4 perhaps. So this is also quite playable for black. But she went f4 and now bishop f8. I think that was a strong move. Now she cannot go g4 yet because the rook on h1 is still hanging, so she went rook g1. And now I played c5. So now kind of the d file is opening up. My rook is already well placed on d8, and here I'm already doing very well. She went g4, which is kind of sticking to her plan, but simply doesn't really work tactically. Here I spent some time, but not that much. In general, my time management today was much better. I kind of set a rule to spend a maximum of 10 minutes per move, and I fully I did that in all moves. I never spent more than 10 minutes, so I'm very happy that I managed to do that today. After all, I decided to take on c4, which is also the best move because I'm just taking on d4 in the next move. I was also thinking about the move g5 here, which looks a bit ridiculous, but I'm just stopping g5, and I thought that in most cases an endgame will anyway come now when my king is not that weak in general, but then I didn't really see the necessity to play g5 because I thought that bishop c4 is simply very good for me. She took back, and now rook takes d4. There was one more important thing here to see, which is that g5 doesn't work because after takes, I have queen takes e5. And after take here, rook d2, I just have two pieces for one rook, which is quite good for me also. Knight pawn on e5 will drop, so this is just winning for me, I think. So she took back and rook d4, now queen e3. And here I went knight c6, which is a good move. I was also calculating bishop d6 here, but after rook d4, c d4, and queen e4, queen takes d4, knight c6, I saw. That was an important idea because after queen d6, queen f4, I'm regaining the piece and I'm simply up a pawn. But I was calculating queen e4, and after knight c6, knight d3, I wasn't entirely sure about the position because I saw the g5 is coming and I thought this would be quite good compensation for her, but I missed the very nice move knight a5 when, according to the computer, it's just lost for white. But I went knight c6, which is also good. Rook d4, c takes d4, queen e4, and now knight takes e5 takes. And in general, I thought that I should have very good winning chances here, even though they're opposite color bishops. But yeah, this is just I'm a pawn up, and the pawn on e5 is always a big weakness, and my king is also quite safe. So I thought this should be quite good for me. But here I kind of made a bit of a wrong decision by going queen g5 check. Here I perhaps should have spent a little bit more time. I was playing a bit too fast here. Queen g5 is also not bad, but queen f2 would have been much stronger. What I saw was that I want to have a position like this. This is what I want to have, but I thought that I could also get it with queen g5 check. So I played queen g5, king b1, and now queen e3, and I was only anticipating her to take. When now I thought that the king is already on b1, which is just a better version for me. That is true, but what I chose in the game gave her an extra option. So queen f2 is much more accurate, and this kind of forces her to go rook f1. And here I'm getting this endgame. Even though the king is on c1 here, this is simply also very much winning for me, because she will not get the pawn on e3, and the pawn on e5 is always a big target, which will sooner or later fall. For example, if rook e1, I guess I can just go bishop c5 or bishop e7. Also a nice idea, because rook e3 doesn't work because of bishop g5. And otherwise, I will simply put the bishop on f4, I guess, and the pawn on e5 will drop sooner or later. So this would have been a bit easier. Queen g5 check, king b1, queen e3, and now she had the chance to go rook e1, which I kind of missed. And now this endgame with the pawn still being on d4 is not so clear. I still have very good winning chances here, but it will not be so easy to convert. I was intending to go rook d8 with the idea to put the bishop on e3 perhaps. So it's quite clear that she will need to suffer for quite a long time here, but objectively speaking, this would have given her the best drawing chances. But she went queen h1, keeping the queens on the board. And now after queen e5, I'm 2 pawns up, so I thought this should be more or less quite easily winning, but it's still not entirely a comfortable conversion because of the opposite color bishops. And she does have some attacking chances, as she did in the game. She played h4. Now rook c8, bishop d3. And here I went rook c6. I had the idea to kind of play for a bit of a counter-attack with rook b6, but perhaps rook c7 would have been a bit of a safer choice. Just guarding the pawn on b7 and playing a bit more defensive, also protecting the pawn on f7, and then sooner or later the bishop will come out, bishop e7, bishop f6, or just g6, bishop g7 when I'm 2 pawns up after all. This is one line, for example, rook e1, queen f4, and if rook e4, queen d6. And I just have to watch out not to allow queen e4, so now queen c6 should be quite easily winning for me. But I went rook c6, now she went rook e1. Instead, g5 perhaps would have been a bit of a better practical chance. And after h5, rook g5, when my king is a little bit weak, I still thought that this should be quite good for me. For example, queen f4, queen e3. But now at least the lines have opened up a little bit when the conversion will be a bit harder for me. But she went rook e1, queen f4, rook e4. Again, I have to kind of stop her from playing queen e4. Like if I go back and allow this, then it could go also very much wrong for me. So I went queen f4 and now went back. My idea was now that if she goes rook e1 here, then my counter attack I thought works quite well, because queen e4, this was what I was calculating, g6, h5, and here I think queen b4. Now I'm threatening mate on b2, so b3. Queen c3 takes, bishop a3, take here, and king f8. And I thought, yeah, there's no check, and queen b2 is coming on the next move. So this was my calculation here after rook e1. But she went queen g1, going after the pawn on d4. Rook b6, still sticking to the plan. Now b3. She could have also taken on d4. I thought this is also possible, but I thought I have quite a few nice choices, like queen c5. I think queen c5 was my main idea. Now e5 is a big threat, and also queen c3 is there, so I thought this should be quite easily winning as well. She went b3. Now bishop e7, hitting the pawn on h4, and rook d4, queen e5. Now one important thing is that queen c5 here doesn't work because of rook d8 when I'm even losing, because the queen will drop. So I went queen e5, rook e4, and queen a5, rook c4, and until here I think I played a very good game, but I made a quite big blunder with g6. Here I was already running a bit low on time, not as much as in the other games, but a little bit. So yeah, this move g6, I don't really have an explanation for that. I saw the idea with rook c6 in general, which I should have gone for here, but I thought if I go g6 first, I will simply get a better version, which I also did in the game, because she played queen d4 when I then went rook c6. But after g6, she had the good chance to go h5, and after g5 now to go rook c8 check, king g7, queen d4 check, bishop f6, and queen e4. And I think I missed, and we both missed, that here there is no queen e1. And here already I'm just completely lost. So after h5 I already have to be a little bit careful. I cannot go g5. I have to go for a draw, basically, like rook c6. When then it's just a draw, basically. So again, g6 was quite a big blunder. I should have gone rook c6 first. But fortunately for me, she went queen d4, and now rook c6, and now I do have a better version after all. Rook c6, bc6, and a4. I even got another pawn, and the rest was quite easy. I'm just 3 pawns up, and okay, she went for the bishop endgame, opposite color bishop endgame, but with 3. I'm not 3 pawns up. I'm 2 pawns up, but these pawns are also not going anywhere, and this is just a huge pawn mass, basically. So I went a5, just completely cementing her counterplay chances at all. And yeah, the rest was not that important. Bishop c7 was also a nice touch, because if I go king f7 first, it's of course still winning, but now b4, a b4, then the pawn at least reaches a6. So I thought I can go bishop c7 just, and if b4 I can just take and not allow a5. So that was kind of the idea with bishop c7. King e3, king g7, and she played on for a little bit. After g5 she resigned. I'm simply pushing my pawns down the board, and it's completely lost. So yeah, that was round 8. That was the recap of today's game. I have to say I'm quite happy with the game overall. There was only this one moment with g6, which did allow her a chance, basically, to escape. But otherwise, I think I played a pretty good game. Also, my time management has gotten much better compared to the more previous games. So I'm looking forward to the last half, to the last section of the tournament, basically. Really eager to score some points in the end and to kind of get a comeback. There are still chances to qualify, like if I win all of my games. And yeah, just trying to stay optimistic, basically. So thank you again for all of your support along this tournament. And I hope you found value in today's recap. And I'll see you guys tomorrow.